Well, would you look at that? You finally made it to the final stretch of Eureka, and the home of the Baldesion Arsenal itself. But before you're ready to enter that raid and get a lovely orb of your own, there's still a bit of work to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojakku, and today we will finally be concluding my 4-part Eureka series, so that you can dive into that raid and finally be one of Grand Spilled Marbles with the rest of us. Welcome to Eureka Hydatos. As usual, before we begin, make sure you've reached Elemental level 50 and finished all of Kryle's quests back in Pyros to unlock Hydatos itself. And if you're running low on logograms or potions of harmony, maybe top off on those before heading in. All set? Great. Then it's time to pop over to our good friend Netflix adaptation Thancred and venture forth into Hydatos. Now, I did mention that this would be a quick one, and I was not lying about that, as Hydatos only has 10 levels before you hit level 60, which would be the elemental cap of Eureka itself. That also means you only need 2 whole levels to be able to party up with anybody in the instance. Challenge logs will certainly get you far along the way to hitting that level cap, and when it comes to mob grinding, you have 2 solid options. You can farm mobs that pop fates for fate trains like we've been doing for most of Eureka so far, or finally you can do adaptation farming. You see, in Hydatos, all adaptations trigger with a 100% guaranteed chance, assuming the conditions are met. I'll leave a bestiary doc in the description so that you can track down adaptable mobs at your level for that juicy big XP boost. Just make sure you're farming them at the time they can actually adapt. As for the fates themselves, it's pretty much what you're used to by now. Relic materials from each fate, special relic mats from the boss fate, Providence Watcher to be exact in this case, yada yada yada. There are even 3 rare Magicite items dropped from 3 specific bosses, those being Molech, Goldamar, and Cedo, and this works exactly like they did back in Pyros, allowing for a maximum of 7 Magicite, should you be lucky enough to collect them all. However, on top of those, we also have 2 special fates specifically tied to the Baldesion Arsenal raid itself, that you should probably know about. The first is Avni, who, instead of being spawned by any sort of mobs, will simply spawn on his own after 20 minutes of the instance being open and at least 8 max level players being present. This silly jellyfish looking guy over here is the actual spawn mechanic for the raid itself. Once it dies, and everyone gets their crystals for killing it, portals will open soon after for the raiders to enter. Please, do not touch these portals unless you are part of a pre-made group running the raid. This is just standard practice for how we do things in the NA and EU servers, so have some good manners and do not interfere. The other special fate is what we call Soup. Why is it called Soup? I do not know. The meaning has been lost to time, but we call it Soup now, so Soup is what it is. Anyways, point being, at a certain point in the raid, this pack of manta ray looking fellows will spawn in, and if this fate is not killed, the raid cannot be cleared. To incentivize this, killing this fate gives a whopping 30 crystals, which is 3 times the amount that you would get from the next highest fates in the zone. Making a return are also the bunny fates. Well, bunny fate in this case, as there's really only one. They function very much the same as they did in Pyros, except with a different loot table, including the Aethertite flasks, which I briefly mentioned before, which are used to expand your Logos action board up to 6 slots like you can see on mine. They also give a series of parts used to make ethereal stabilizers. However, these items are useless, at least in the NA and EU data centers, as they end up interfering and griefing the raid portals. So feel free to just throw all these out and never use them, because they're not really going to be worth anything anyways. I told you this was going to be a quickie, didn't I? Good, because it's already time to talk about the relic. It's very straightforward here in Hydatos. There are no light farms or magic kettles, just Hydatos crystals, 350 per relic, and 5 crystalline scales from the final boss, as well as an upgraded version of your elemental glam that adds a special glow to it and will cost you 190 crystals for a full set. Now technically, the relic is finished at this stage. There are no more achievements past this point. However, still one last final optional stage that uses 100 Eurekan fragments to upgrade your relic to what is known as a Physios weapon. These fragments are only attained in the raid itself and cannot be traded with other players. Thus, the only way to get them is manually doing the raid on your own. This final stage gives you a large elemental stat boost, making these weapons, and by extension, any class that equip these weapons, best in slot for Eureka and the Baldesion arsenal. You can also upgrade your elemental gear with fragments to a +2 set, giving even more elemental stat boost to truly max out your character, but it is entirely optional and just for those who have become addicted to the raid. Congratulations! By this point, you have now successfully completed all that Eureka has to offer, raid not included. Don't forget to pick up replicas of your new relic and say goodbye to Team Thancred for the last time. That is, of course, unless you want the almighty Orb of Wonders. For that, you'll have to brave the depths of the Baldesion arsenal for yourself, but that is a whole topic in itself for another time. But, if I'm being honest, it's not as difficult as people make it out to be. Should you wish to chase an orb of your own, I highly recommend that you check out the Cafe Discord, which I will put a link below. That's where, personally, I got my own orb and have done all of my Baldesion Arsenal runs so far, and they are lovely people and very willing to teach new players. So if you're in any of the NA data centers, go ahead, give them a gander, and pop over to Crystal and get yourself an orb. All that aside, thank you all for joining me on this little endeavor, and I hope I answered all the questions you may have involving Eureka. Making these guys has been a learning experience and a pleasure. Feel free to do all the liking and subscribing and usual YouTube whatnots. But that's all I have for you for now. Until next time.